It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome to our Kentucky Derby edition of the Friday Show, presented by NYRA's loyalty program for horsemen. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're so glad to have you with us. Ray, before we get to our picks, we've got to do our picks, you know that. We've been talking to people this week about their favorite Derby memories, whether that's as connections of horses or just as fans. So we've got a couple of those. I'm going to start with you, though. Tell me your favorite Derby memory.
Well, that would be my first Kentucky Derby, 1988, when I moved to Lexington from Los Angeles. My wife Carol was with me, 7 months pregnant, came to the Derby. Between, during the races, after the races, we walked back and forth from the grandstand to the backside probably 3 or 4 times that day. Really put her through the paces. A couple months later, she had a healthy baby boy. So 1988 winning Colors' Kentucky Derby. That was Wayne Lucas's first Kentucky Derby win, by the way.
That's a good story, and it was one of 4 D. Wayne Lucas Kentucky Derby victories. I'll give you my. I haven't been in the industry as long as you have. I did get a chance to do the walkover, and it was with California Chrome, so that was really cool in 2014. And then in 2011, I did pick the trifecta on the Paulick Report before the race. So that was pretty exciting because it paid 2,000 to 1 with Animal Kingdom on top. So I'm a little proud of that, although I haven't been able to repeat it since then. We'll get to the picks in a minute. Speaking of D. Wayne Lucas, he was one of the people we asked to tell a favorite Derby memory.
My favorite's easy. That's when I met Bill Young at on the grass in the infield after Grindstone won. That was special. I mean, each one of those with an owner. I won for 4 different owners in my 4, and but with Bill Young, I waited over there. I got down there obviously a lot quicker than he did, and I waited for him. And we met on the turf course there before we went to the winner's circle and exchanged some thoughts, and it was the best. Very touching.
Well, D. Wayne Lucas has been a Derby fixture since the 1980s. This is the first Kentucky Derby for Mick Ruiz. Not the first Derby he's seen, but he's got Bolt Doro in here as his first Derby starter. He has a pretty interesting story about his favorite Kentucky Derby memory.
Yeah, my favorite Derby memory is when, I grew up in San Diego County, so in those days we'd go watch the Derby, we'd go across the border to Agua Caliente racetrack, and I remember watching Gato del Sol on the slot, and I had $300 on him, and that's a lot of money in those days, and he won, and that was incredible to see him win and come through the mud, and it was hard to see those because the way the TV had in those days in Caliente, but I thought it was a horse coming through and he won, and that's probably my most memorable, was watching Gato del Sol win.
Did you have that horse, Gato del Sol, by the way?
I did not. Gato, the interesting thing about him is he won the Kentucky Derby. He was perfectly healthy. He did not go on to race in the Preakness in 1982. Trainer Eddie Gregson decided he didn't want to race 2 weeks later. Skip the race.
Can't do that. All right, let's talk about the Kentucky Oaks first. How do you see the race shaping up? Who do you land on?
Well, the morning line tells you this is a two-horse race. Midnight Bassoux and Monomoy Girl. I think of the two, Midnight Bassoux is a standout. The move that she made in the Santa Anita Oaks, to me, is the kind of move that wins Kentucky Oaks races. You have to sustain a run, and she sustained her run at Santa Anita for a half mile. I was tremendously impressed by her, and I think she will win the Oaks for Bill Sparr and Jeff Bloom's Bloom Racing Stable.
Oh, and who's the jockey on her?
Mike Smith.
Yeah, I was going to say
Big Money Mike.
Yeah, he never wins big races. I like to look at the long shots, and I agree with you about Midnight Bassoux and the other favorite, Monomoy Girl, but drawn outside. I can't go there at that price. There are 2 fillies in here that I like as upsetters potentially. One is Rhea at 15 to 1, who finished second. A long way second to Mendelssohn in the UAE Derby, but she beat the rest of the boys, and she's in Bob Baffert's barn now, and that was kind of a surprising twist, and he thinks she's really good, and he's obviously brought her to the Oaks, so you've got to watch out for her. And the other one is Coach Rocks, who we talk about making a big move. She made a huge move in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, and to win. I think she is also a big upset chance in the Oaks.
All right, who you got in the Derby?
So I think the Derby boils down to about 4 to 5 horses that have a real chance of winning. Okay, those horses are Mendelssohn, Justify, Bolt D'Oro, and Good Magic, with Audible on the cusp. I'm tossing Magnum Moon. I've decided, you gotta draw the line somewhere. So I think it's down to that quartet. I like Mendelssohn. The fact that he's run on 3 continents already versus Justify, who's had 3 races and all on the same racetrack. I just have to go with the horse that has the more experience, even though the upside might be greater. So I'm going to go with Mendelssohn, and I really like Vino Rosso as a long shot to hit the board.
Well, I think the Kentucky Derby is a race that you need experience to win it, and I think that Justify is an extremely talented horse, does not have enough experience. This is a really talented but lightly raced group of horses overall, and that puts me over on Bolt D'Oro. He was an exceptional 2-year-old. He lost the 2-year-old championship when he drew the bad post position for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Del Mar. Had a terrible trip that day. He hasn't really run a bad race, and I think that if you take Justify out of the equation, he's the standout of the group, and Justify to me does not have the experience to win the Kentucky Derby.
And then, as I mentioned before, Good Magic, I think if you look at his last race, which was the Bluegrass Stakes, it wasn't that impressive. It wasn't impressive on time or visually, but you have to keep in mind what Chad Brown does, and that is not crank up his horse for the prep race. He gets him ready for the big race. This is going to be the 3rd start off a layoff for Good Magic. He wasn't cranked up for the Bluegrass. He is now, by all appearances. So I definitely don't think you want to sleep on Good Magic in this Kentucky Derby.
It's going to be a great race. Wayne Lucas at the trainers dinner earlier this week said one of you is going to have an event that changes your life, and the Derby is a life-changing event for many people.
Another Derby memory. Maybe someone is going to make their favorite Derby memory this year. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show presented by NYRA's Loyalty Program for Horsemen. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the Oaks and the Derby. Good luck with your bets.